hand you over to our lead facilitator, which is Amelia Chitney, and she will talk us through what to expect. Thank you very much. Over to you, Amelia.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia, and welcome to this afternoon's session for the Race Equality Week. Thank you all for attending. I'm just going to let you know some housekeeping rules, if that's okay. Just before we start, please do feel free to keep your camera on if you'd like to. It would be lovely to see your faces. However, we do ask that you keep your microphone on mute, please, to avoid any disruptions. Yeah. And also, we do have the chat function box. If you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to stick your hand up, and you can be nominated and you can ask your questions if you'd like. And also, we do have Slido as well, that I will share with you the code and the link at the end of this, and you can feel free to ask any questions via that as well. Also, if we've got any colleagues that are hard of hearing, can you please turn on the transcribe function, which you can do so by selecting the 3 buttons at the top of the screen. And also, just to let you know that today's session will be recorded. So if you're not keen on being seen on the recording, you're more than welcome as well to turn your camera off. Apart from that, I'd ask that we all please be respectful and professional throughout the session, and to follow all the housekeeping rules. Thank you. Next slide, please, Diana. So the Slido link and QR code is just as I've mentioned over there. So please feel free to use that, please, to ask any questions anonymously, please. Thank you. Next slide. And your facilitators today, as Diana mentioned, is myself, Amelia Chitney. So I'm matron for international recruitment for NHFT. I'm also PNA lead as well for NHFT. Well, I think we've got disruption
when that
there.
other person sits there, then you'll make the difference.
Sorry, Sophie, could you just mute for us? Thank you. Thanks very much. So I'll just continue with the introduction. So your facilitator today, there's also Sophia Bruce, who's Workplace Programme Manager for the Integrated Care Northamptonshire, and also Diana Belfon, EDI Specialist for Integrated Care Northamptonshire. And so I'll introduce you all as well now to Toby Saunders, who's the Chief Executive for the Northamptonshire Integrated Care Board, who will start off the session for us. Thank you. Over to you, Toby.
Amelia, thank you very much for that. Sophia, are you going to drop the screen share at that point so that we can kind of see each other a little bit more on screen here as well? That'd be great. Also means we take down that photograph of me looking like something out of a Littlewoods catalogue. Right, good afternoon, everyone. Give us a wave, those of you I can see on screen. It's nice to see a lot of faces, some familiar, some colleagues out there that good to have you with us. My name's Toby Saunders. I'm the Chief Executive of Northamptonshire's Integrated Care Board here in the county. And I know we've got colleagues today, primarily from across the Northamptonshire health and care system, from various partner organisations and voluntary sector colleagues I can see on screen as well. But I know we've also got some colleagues from out of county in some of our surrounding areas. So wherever you're from, wherever you're dialing in from today, it's a real kind of great to have you with us, and I'm sure we've got a really super session coming up. My kind of role today really is just to make some opening remarks from a leadership perspective within Northamptonshire, and also most importantly in a moment to introduce our 2 keynote speakers from our regional team at NHS England. But before I do that, Diana asked me just to share a few kind of personal reflections at the start of this conversation, really just to frame the discussion that we're going to have, and perhaps put some of my thoughts from a leadership kind of community perspective into this discussion. I'm going to just start off, if people will sort of indulge me, by just sharing a few kind of my personal experiences, and perhaps by stating one of the most startlingly obvious things at the upfront of this call. I'm very conscious that I don't look like a lot of you on screen in front of me. It's wonderful to see so many of you out there and the hands waving, but I'm very conscious that my experiences, my life experiences, my life chances are very different and have been very different from many of those on this call, and for many of our NHS health and care staff across our county, and for many of our patients and population within Northamptonshire. I was fortunate enough to be at a tremendous event in Northamptonshire just pre-Christmas that Northamptonshire Black Communities Together put on and ran, the first of their annual conferences. I suspect quite a few of the people on this call may well also have been present at that as well. And I was asked there just to say some opening remarks, and I want to just pick up on a couple of themes from that session. My start in life, I was very sort of privileged life, and I can recognise that looking back at it. I was born in the southwest into a primarily very white community, into a very middle-class family. I never really had to think too much about what my career opportunities might be. I was encouraged by my family that I could do anything I wanted to do. I could be anything I wanted to be. There was no real kind of limiting self-beliefs that either I had or my family or society felt like they placed on me. And I went to university in Manchester. I never had kind of that self-doubt question of whether I deserved to be there or whether I was clever enough to be there, whether I was in somewhere that was for people like me. And when I went out into the workplace and started applying for jobs and moving through the earlier phases of my career, I never gave a second thought as to whether people were judging me because of my skin colour, whether people were assessing me and my suitability to be in teams because of the way I sounded, because of my voice, because of the language that I used. And it's really only been in sort of later years in life that I've realised just the stark difference between my life chances and my experiences and my expectations as I've grown up compared to an awful lot of you on screen today, to an awful lot of our staff across the health and care sector, and to an awful lot of our population in terms of their lived experience of their daily lives. Some of you will have been with us last year for an equivalent kind of Race Equality Week session where we were fortunate enough to be joined by Patricia Miller, who's my equivalent in the chief executive role down in Dorset, Integrated Care Board. And Patricia just talked so powerfully about almost the complete opposite to my experiences in life. And I've talked to Patricia a number of times since when we've been together in London or at other national events. And if anything, that and the various other things the last few years have just fired up in me a real commitment to use the opportunity I have in my leadership role from an allyship perspective. I can't, and it would be wrong of me to attempt to be able to relate to some of your experiences. They're not mine. That's not authentic. What I can bring from the chief executive role in an NHS organisation, from a leadership role within a health and care community and system, is that leadership voice, is that allyship perspective. And I've realised that I've got an opportunity and a role and a responsibility in that to do something to make a difference, to do something to improve the working lives of our staff, and to do something to support and improve the health outcomes for our population. And from a staff point of view, we know far too often still the kind of discrimination that our staff face and experience, both from patients, actually members of the public, as much as from colleagues and as much as from some of those organisational institutional issues that impact on people's day-to-day working lives. But also when I look across Northamptonshire, and I did a lot of work in prep for that Northamptonshire Black Communities Together conference pre-Christmas. And although when you look at a county like Northamptonshire, and I'm sure this is true for some of the other areas that some of you might be dialing in from, unlike some of the very, very obviously diverse kind of systems that we've got in the country, places I've worked in the past like Leicester City, Birmingham, Salford, actually Northamptonshire overall looks remarkably average. If you look at us statistically, we look remarkably average. But when you dive down into that, when you look at the differences in terms of race and ethnicity across some of our different communities, and then when you layer onto that social class gradient and look at it from an inequalities, from a poverty, from a deprivation perspective, you really start to see the layering up in terms of the impact on people's health and well-being, their outcomes, their life chances, which aren't exclusively race and inequalities linked, but actually there is a significant component here that really, in my kind of simplistic language, almost kind of double whammies on top of some of those issues around inequalities and around social class gradient. So when I look at our county here in Northamptonshire and look at the stats that my population health team put in front of me that tell me that people with mixed ethnic backgrounds are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression, that tell me that Black people are 2.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with hypertension, or that people of Indian and Pakistani and Bangladeshi origin are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with coronary heart disease. That's not okay. those kind of inequalities, those kind of differences are something that people in my leadership role, and I'm delighted also I can see our chair of our Integrated Care Board, Naomi, on screen with us today as well. We have a duty, we have a responsibility to do something about this. And that, from my perspective, is why my presence, my involvement in sessions like today is something that I've made a real personal commitment to. And pre-Christmas at that MBCT event here in Northamptonshire, I committed our organisation to work with partners across our county to produce what will be the first for Northamptonshire in terms of a race and health inequalities action plan. And I deliberately say action plan because actually this Race Equality Week is all about listen, action, change. And this is not about producing another strategy or another plan document. We've frankly got enough of those. We've had enough of them over the years. What we need to do is work together across our system with partners to work out practically what are the things that we can do that will make a difference for our staff and for our population. And looking at that completely unapologetically from a race lens in terms of the life chances and the impact on people's experiences. And so for me, that's why I'm with you today, and that's why I'm delighted in a moment to introduce our two keynote speakers. But before I do that, I just wanted to share something that kind of very live for me this morning, which perhaps more than everything I've just described about my kind of experiences over the last 50 almost years now, emphasises why this agenda is so important for the next 50. This morning, I was just over the road here in Kettering at an event that Northamptonshire Council were running, and it was something called their Big 50 event. And they've been running this big visioning event across business, across the voluntary sector, across education, across housing, across health, with a whole mix of different partners together, really looking out to 2050, looking down the road 26 years and asking the big questions for that part of our county in terms of the issues we need to address from a place perspective. And what was really powerful this morning, Tresham College, big educational provider in our system, had 3 of their pupils with us, 3 teenagers with us this morning. And these really 3 brave young people got up on stage in front of a lot of people like me in suits and other colleagues from across different organisations. And they talked about what was important for them in terms of their vision for Northamptonshire in terms of that Big 50. And there were 3 things they talked about. They talked about housing in terms of the importance of housing for people across our community. They talked about vaping and the need for us to do something about vaping as a society. But actually 2 of the 3 of them talked about diversity. They talked about discrimination. They talked about their experiences as young Black people in that part of our county and in their life, and the impact that has on them, their friends, their communities, their aspirations in terms of education and employment, and in terms of their families' life chances, in terms of their own health and well-being. And I just thought that was so powerful to have a whole audience of people picking the big things that they felt the group of people in that room, most of us in senior leadership roles, should be doing something about. Of those 3 big agendas, they kind of lifted out that diversity and discrimination piece. And actually, I think there's also a race lens to housing as well, if we wanted to get into that, but that's probably for another time. So I hope that kind of just gives a little bit of insight as to why I'm here, to why I'm committed to this agenda, and to the role that I am committed to continue to play across our county. Now, we do have clearly some tremendous work already underway by various partner organisations across Northamptonshire, and I know that will be true for many of you in other parts of the region who are dialing in. In particular, some of the work that's been done locally around Safe to Speak Up and the Safe to Speak Up sessions that I think 2 of our speakers in a moment are sponsored from a regional point of view. Diana, you've really picked that up and run with that from a county perspective, with other colleagues feeding into that. And also, I'm delighted to see today some of our voluntary sector colleagues here with us as well, some of whom I know are going to be contributing a little bit later on. So we've got lots to build on, but looping really back to that point around race inequalities action plan for us locally, I want to take that starting point. I want to work with all of our partner organisations, look at what the data and the evidence tells us, but I want us to be challenging. I want us to stretch ourselves in terms of where we should be going next, both for our workforce and also for our population. And I really hope, and I'm sure the session we've got coming up next is going to give us plenty to think about, particularly with a focus on our workforce and on our staff perspective. So I'm delighted now to be able to introduce our 2 keynote speakers. Steve Morrison, who I can see on screen. Give us a wave, Steve, in case people can't read the little words at the bottom of the screen there. Steve is our Regional Director of Workforce and OD for NHS England and the Midlands region. Steve's worked and been with NHS England since 2012 in various roles, but his current portfolio includes delivery of the NHS long-term workforce plan, as well as advising on diversity, leadership and workforce transformation. Previous to working within NHS England, Steve has worked and had appointments with social care, with universities, and as well as most provider trusts and other commissioning organisations as well. So a huge amount of experience and background that Steve's bringing to the role, and really looking forward to what Steve's going to be sharing with us shortly. And then secondly, I'd like to introduce Kuvy Seenan. I can see, again, Kuvy, I can see you on screen there. Give me a wave. Kuvy, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I did. Okay, thank you. Kuvy is the head of equality and inclusion, also at NHS England Midlands team. He was born in Mauritius, came to the UK to undertake his training as a psychiatric nurse, and has worked in the NHS for about 20 years in various roles, both clinical, education, training, and very much now from a leadership and an inclusion perspective. So delighted to have Steve and Kuvy with us. We've also got some other contributors as well, who are going to be sharing some examples of particular areas of work, and other colleagues will bring them in as we get to that stage. But just from my perspective, great to have everybody with us today. I hope that's set a little bit of a scene for what we're going to get into conversation-wise, and I will hand over now to Steve and to Kuvy. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. Thank you. And hello, everybody. And how incredibly pleasing is to see such a good turnout as well. So thank you for people taking time to join us this afternoon. So I think Toby's just given us a fantastic introduction, Kirby, but I'm going to give you a chance to say hello and at least say a few words before we go into the presentation. So over to you, Kirby. Just say something that you'd like to say.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yes, and I'm really pleased to be here, really. I've started sharing my screen. I think hopefully people can see that. But yes, so really delighted to have the session. I think I was here last year around this time as the regional lead on EDI, sort of talking about our strategy in the region. So today, really good to kind of, me and you, Steve, talk about where we are, what's happened since last year, and actually sort of have a bit of discussion around sort of kind of progress and challenges really for all of us in terms of tackling race equality in the Midlands and particularly in Northamptonshire. So looking forward to having that discussion with colleagues today.
Thank you, Kuvy. And I'm Steve Morrison, as Toby said, and my portfolio includes lots of things, but actually equality, inclusion and justice in terms of our employment practices and policies is absolutely at the heart of what I'm here to do. I thought I'd share very quickly before we go into the presentation just a little bit about my kind of very quick journey to realization that I knew very, very little about equality. So I much like Toby, grew up in a very white background, but it was a different sort of white background, I suspect. I grew up on the Manor Estate, which is a big working class estate in the middle of Hartlepool, which is an industrial town on the northeast of England. And in the 60s, when I was growing up, in the early 70s, it was still a steel making community. It was still barely, but still a shipbuilding community. And it's surrounded by a coal mining community. So it was very traditional, hard labour. And I think I would have to say that my whole years at school, I didn't know or have a conversation with anybody from a black background. From an ethnic minority background, yes, there were a number of children alongside me from Chinese community and one or two from Indian and Pakistani backgrounds. But in terms of black colleagues, nobody. There was nobody. I had no friends at all at school who came from a black background. And I spent the first part of my career building from what was a very working class background. I didn't go to university. Being really quite smug about the success I was having in my career as I developed my career in people management across the public sector, and thinking, gosh, I'm a real success story, aren't I? I've come from a place where I didn't have a huge amount of privilege, I thought. I came from a place where I didn't have a great start, and I'm building a decent career. And it's only really as I've been working in an environment that really demonstrated to me what real challenge looks like in terms of equality, that I came to realize that despite the fact that I came from a relatively relatively poor background, I certainly still came from a very privileged background. And I was shocked to find, as I've developed my understanding of equality, I was shocked to find that issues to do with gender, issues to do with race, issues to do with sexuality can have such a massive impact on people's life expectations and life chances. And so I think I'd have to be really honest to say that I've spent quite a long time understanding that and getting to know that. And like Toby has said as well, I can never walk in the shoes of those people that have faced those challenges, but at least now I've had the opportunity to reflect on and read and learn from others and start to understand some of those challenges without necessarily having the life experiences that enable me to be really confident that I could say I understand what the challenges are. But I certainly kind of have spent a lot of time thinking about what that looks like in the more recent years of my career. And I'd like to think I'm a very different person to the person that started a career back in the 1980s. In terms of Kuvy and myself, we've been working together for 4 or 5 years now, Kuvy, haven't we? From really very different backgrounds in every sense, really. So Kuvy's a clinician. I'm not a clinician. Kuvy came from a place where he was doing a lot of work in the NHS, supporting people with mental health challenges and backgrounds. And I've never worked in any kind of therapeutic role whatsoever. And on the equality agenda, Kuvy is steeped in knowledge about all aspects of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I've had to learn things as I've gone along. And also Kuvy, you won't mind me saying, has got life experiences which he can bring to that table as well that I, as I've said, I can never have. But the two things that Kuvy and I agreed on as soon as we arrived in the region together was, well, first of all, that regardless of the breadth and opportunity around equality, diversity, and inclusion, that there was one particular area that we really had to start, and that was race equality and justice in employment for people from a black and a minority ethnic background. We had to start there. This region has got, outside of London, the biggest number of colleagues working in the NHS from a BAME background, a black minority ethnic background. And so on that basis, on that absolute basis, we felt that race equality had to be our starting point. And the second thing that we agreed on is that this had to be about leadership. This had to be about senior leaders in organisations taking accountability for delivering a fair, safe, just working environment for everybody, and particularly for people from a black and minority ethnic background, because we'd spent so long trying to make it different and failing. And so the old input that we'd had in the past about enabling people to develop themselves, enable people to do more and more courses, kind of fighting in this unequal way to develop careers, to have a safe place to work, to be heard properly in the workplace. Those old ways of doing things just weren't delivering for us. And so we agreed, secondly, that we were going to really focus on how you lead that agenda. And so we started from a perspective that everybody benefits from a fair, safe and equitable working environment. But if we did that through the prism of race equality, we would drive that for everybody. And that's where we've been for the last 2 or 3 years. And that's where we intend to be going forward, because that's still, in our view, the right way forward. And the other thing we felt we needed to do is make a really big statement about how much this mattered. And so we developed, and Toby said it's not about policies. I totally agree with him, but we went and did a strategy anyway, Toby, and we pulled together our regional. Sorry, I think you moved on a bit there, Kuvy, right? Our regional race equality inclusion strategy. And the reason we did that is we want to signal how important this issue was for us to make a difference, to move that dial once and for all, to actually start seeing some success. And it's the only area of policy across the whole workforce agenda that we have a single standardized regional strategy on. We didn't do it for anything else. We did it for race equality. And that's why, because we felt it needed senior level regional, organisational and system leadership to make a difference. And our equality strategy focuses on the areas you can see on the screen. And I'm not going to go through them because I'm hoping people have read them in the past and are working on them. But you can see, as you look at them, how leading with compassion and accountability, they're really up there as crucial elements of it for us. And we think that we'll only deliver change if we've got our senior leaders taking full professional and personal accountability for making a difference. And we've been working on that for some time now. So if we can look at the next slide, Kuvy, because we were fortunate that we had the EDI improvement plan, high impact actions to build our strategy around. And these are really practical ways that senior leaders can change their organisation, make their organisation more inclusive and more equal in terms of opportunity. And if you look down the left hand side, you will again know these well, I'm sure. These are the high impact actions that we've all committed to try and deliver within the NHS. And you can see how they map across. The middle column is how we actually check to see if we're making any progress, and the final column on the right hand side, that looks at what the kind of objective within our strategy might be like, building on the high impact actions. So we've tried to make this a leaders-led initiative, so a chief executive chair initiative. We've tried to focus on accountability and delivering some actions that will genuinely change the environment that we're working in. And we've tried to make sure it's seen as a really high regional priority by having this as our only region-wide strategy. So that's what we've tried to do through some of the work we've done at the region. I'm really not doing it very good service in the very short time I've got to speak about it. But many people on this call will know that it incorporates a huge amount of work that everybody is doing to try and make a difference around some of these headings. Now, what we'd like to do now is ask Kuvy then to talk a bit about how this translates into what's going on within the Northamptonshire system. So this is our high impact strategy that is happening in every one of our 11 systems. And this is the regional commitment to it. But it'd be nice now to be able to explore just for a few minutes what that looks like in terms of the system that you're working in, the Northamptonshire system. So Kuvy, could I give you the opportunity to take us through a couple of slides on that?
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so and again, just a quick intro for myself really is I'm really delighted to be here today. So as Steve's mentioned, really, I think for me in the last 3 or 4 years, as regional lead, it's given me an absolute great opportunity to use my lived experience. As Steve's mentioned, obviously this is something that I cherish and embrace in terms of having moved from a different country into England for now 24 years and having worked predominantly and lived in England, taking on my lived experience and going through actually sort of this as my career, really understanding how me as a person of color really experience the worldview here and the workplace in society is extremely important. But also it's about really thinking about my story is my story. When experiencing my experience of thinking about racism will be different to perhaps other people experience of racism too. And that is important for us, not to think that our stories are all relevant or all shared in commons, but there's also some commonalities, but also some individual experiences that we need to bear in mind. So for me in the last 3-4 years, it's been an absolute pleasure because that opportunity I've not had, I have to say honestly, in the NHS for the last 20 years that I've worked in the NHS. So as somebody of color, often we think that we don't have the voice and the power, but sometimes we do. And the experience that I've had using my expertise and professional and personal at a senior level has really given me a platform to hopefully help people on the ground. So really, what have we done in the last 3 years? I think very importantly, as Toby has mentioned earlier, we didn't want to create a strategy for the sake of strategy. And what I really need to say is that the strategy has been co-developed with people on the ground during the time when Black Lives Matter movements was really sort of at the forefront of everything we were saying in the world, but also in terms of the impact of COVID, really, in terms of the experience of colleagues experiencing the lack of support, the issues that the data that has been telling us for many years since the inception of RAISE and theirs as well. So really for us, this wasn't a strategy that was just written as a corporate strategy, but really hopefully help people to have a clear kind of perhaps vision in terms of thinking about how that links to their own personal objectives and their organizational objectives. So where are we so far? So last year, I was privileged again to share the strategy with you. I'm not going to go into detail, but you guys know the objectives as Steve mentioned. And I really wanted to sort of share really as a point of reflection. So this week, Race Equality Week, is about listening, acting and changing. And what for me, the key messages in terms of thinking about the self-assessment that we have from your systems shows that we are still at an emerging stage. We're still at an early stage in terms of implementing some of the actions within the strategy. So if you look at the key area of the strategy that still affects regionally and nationally, so how staff are supported in terms of speaking up, for example, how our leaders take actions and take ownership of the agenda, how do we support staff to progress in the career, and how do we tackle disciplinaries, and you can see other aspect. The 2022 submission last year shows that actually there was a picture showing that you were, as a system, more developing in certain areas like tackling disciplinaries, eliminating bullying and harassment, removing barriers to speak up, and tackling bias in recruitment and progression. But the latest submissions, and thank you to Diana, your EDI system leads, working in collaboration across the system, has provided sort of a new insight, new narrative of where you guys are. Whilst it shows that actually it looks like it's deteriorated because there are areas of undeveloped, actually for me, what shows in that self-assessment is some transparency and honesty about really where you are now given the situation, the challenges presented to you as a system. So whilst it might look like you're going backwards, for me and Steve and the regions feels actually this is more about holding ownership, transparency, and looking at the reality and what now we need to do moving forward. So starting with acknowledgement and honesty is important. So I'm going to now take you through some of the elements in terms of thinking about some of the areas of positive shift. But what I want to say really from the self-assessment for ICN, whilst there's still a long way to go, some of the good things that we've actually sort of noted is the collaborative working, where you're bringing primary care, social care together and developing what you said earlier, Toby, not another strategy, but looking at a race equality plan that will support the region, the systems in addressing some of those key issues within that we've set out in the strategy. One of the things that we found actually as a challenge, as what we'll raise, is that in the RES data, as you can see, 2022, 2023, the challenge still remains fairly similar in regards to actually when you look at the experience of discrimination across the systems, where discriminations from managers and team leaders remains fairly high for BME colleagues. And we know that, as you mentioned earlier, the diversity representation of BME colleagues across the systems is fairly large in the workforce. I mean, in some of the organizations, we're talking about 1/3 of your workforce who are from a BME background. So you can see that actually this indicator 8 remains a key issue for you as a system. Career progressions, accessing career progressions and equal opportunities also remains one of the important barriers to challenge, to address. So something that we will want to work with you in the next 12 months to look at addressing. And partly, again, it goes back to how we as a system, as a regions, embed the right culture to address some of the behavior that leads to some of those challenges. Now, some of the signs of positive progress, I didn't want to sort of hone in too much on the challenges, but we need to come back to that because that's the reality. But some of the things that I really wanted to sort of hone in on as well today is that in the previous year, last year 2022, when we have the first ICS data pack, there was no areas of high performance that we noted in 2022. But for this year, there has been a shift in terms of a progression in terms of indicator 3, where the reductions of formal disciplinary has reduced between BME and white colleagues. But also, although career progression as a whole is still a big challenge, what we're seeing is in the non-clinical role, there has been a shift in progression in terms of career progressions, where actually we're seeing more people progressing in that area, but actually other areas needs to be looked at. So some of the elements of good practice. The So that's how you compare to national figure. The other element that I wanted to highlight is last year as a system, through our Midas initiative, we've had two good practice that came out from your systems. So it's really for us an opportunity to raise the profile of two leaders within your system here that actually had a really great sort of nomination from the Midas. So Angela Hillary, as an executive leadership, excellence in executive leadership, won the award last year, and Jane Sanjeevi in terms of taking ownership and leading on leveling up program for international educated nurses. So two really great good practice that we highlighted through the Midas. And for this year, we've got actually 11 submissions from your systems. So I can't declare yet those finalists. So we are going through that this week, but soon at the end of the week or next week, we will be announcing who our finalists are, and hopefully we'll be inviting them to our Midas event. So in terms of other area I wanted to highlight, since we've had again, shout out to Diana, our EDI system leads here, since we've had Diana coming into the role, it has made a difference because for us as a regions, we've got that clear working collaboration and link with somebody supporting yourself, Toby, and others in terms of looking at how, as a system, you develop your plan, how you construct and develop the governance structure, supporting system networks to really take EDI and race equality seriously. And as a result of that appointment, we've also seen a shift, as I mentioned, the level of transparency. For us, it isn't about making sure we just got the numbers right or just sort of doing things that on a transactional basis just to show that we're busy, but actually start with honesty and acknowledgement where the problems are. So that is positive as well. So some of the offers that we have in the regions I wanted to highlight are work that we've been doing last year to support not just Northamptonshire, but actually the regions. And there are a couple of work that actually is dedicated to systems, particularly Northamptonshire and LLR. We'll explain in a little while. But you can see here in the top left quadrant, there has been a strong focus from the regions to look at leadership support in terms of network, in terms of staff, executive sponsors, in terms of EDI leads. This has come to an end, and we're now looking at evaluating this work and to sort of look at the learning from that. But most importantly, again, this is not about program to just sort of kind of look at people attending a program and saying how good it was. But what is important here is to look at what actions leaders will be taking. What I can say really, the challenge that we've had, and I'm going to highlight that for, again, other piece of work here, not all of them, is where I think the difficulty is how do we create a space and support leaders to have the time to engage with those important discussions and learning opportunities. So, for example, creating safe environments where we've piloted a piece of work supporting LLR and Northamptonshire, specifically to look at supporting leaders, to look at understanding their own commitment to what gets in the way in creating the right environment, safe environment for people to speak up. Unfortunately, that event was not well attended as much as we would have liked to see from executive leaders. In fact, there was barely any, probably one or two. And those are things that actually for us is about understanding. It makes us curious about what else needs to be done to make sure our leaders engage and demonstrate that level of commitment right across the board, not just sitting with Toby, but across all execs. So it is important for us to do that. And in regards to what we are doing going forward, apart from looking at evaluating some of that work we're doing, most importantly, we want to focus on our energy around creating a culture of accountability, and hence why 8th of March 2024 we'll really focus on the first time event. We know it's not going to change the world and focusing on just a one-day conference, but it will be a starter in terms of making sure leaders come prepared in telling us about their personal achievement in the last 12 months in tackling inequalities in the workforce, race, inequality, but also wider inequality, but also personally, what are the challenges they face? And then thirdly, what actions and objectives will they personally take going forward in the next 12 months? So this is an opportunity for us to create transparency, openness, but also supporting our leaders to demonstrate their EDI leadership. So you can see some of that offers there. But going forward, I think it's fair for us to say within the new creating of the new NHS England going forward, is our work will be more about supporting our region, our systems as critical friends, being expert in the field, facilitating, enabling, but more so importantly, having difficult and constructive conversation about progress. I wanted to highlight this report, which has only just been published this week. This is a report that was done in collaboration with Brad and Roger Klein. It highlights why racism still remains a deep-rooted problem. And I would encourage everybody to kind of read this report after we share that. But one of the things that I would highlight here really is that we do focus a lot on transactional activities rather than transformational activities, initiatives. So really just getting numbers up and making us look good as an organization is not going to be good enough. It's important in terms of representation, but what's more important is about how do we challenge and making sure we have the right set of behaviors that everybody abide to. So I'm now going to pass you back to Steve to take us to the next element of this presentation in terms of reflecting on today, listening, act and change, and open discussions in terms of since last year and and this year's presentations, what else needs to happen really. So Steve, if I can hand back over to you.
Yeah, so I think we are quite tight for time, aren't we? So just to remind people that we've got the chat facility, we've got the silo facility. So if people have got ideas and thoughts about what they'd like to be different or what they'd like to drive, then we can use that. I think, Amelia, we perhaps have 1 or 2 minutes if there's anybody who wants to come in and ask a specific question or make a specific point, just so we stay on agenda. But just let me finalise by saying it's been a real pleasure working in partnership with Northamptonshire ICB on this agenda. Real pleasure, very open, very willing. People are committed. We heard from Toby at the start how fantastic the most senior leadership are in terms of their commitment to all of this. But a long way to go, as Kuvy says, long way to go, and that is the case, and we need to be honest about that as well. So I'll let Diana come in, and then I think Amelia might want to say something about any questions. But over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Steve. We've just got quite a few questions, to be honest with you, via Slido. And one of them particularly is, what are the plans for growing the diverse talent within organisations so that we can recognise the ambition of our colleagues from ethnic minority backgrounds?
So let me take that first, then Kuvy might come in. But you'll have noticed one of the things on Kuvy's slide was something that talked about leadership and talent management, succession planning, and what we have in the process for next year is a really quite comprehensive review of our talent management process about how do we increase and change the talent pipelines that we have, so that when we're looking to the more senior appointments at kind of board or just below board level, we've got a truly diverse group of participants who have got a really good opportunity to make a claim for one of those senior leadership roles. So there is a very significant change in the talent strategy that's coming out for next year, which will apply across the whole region and nationally as well. It's a national strategy, but it will give us a chance to relook at how traditionally people get into that, how people become visible for senior roles, how they get into those pipelines, and how can we make that different, because we know it doesn't work at the moment. We know that actually that we do not get visibility on fantastic leaders out there who are not visible because they are not in the right place at the right time, because of the traditional and racist type structures we have around networking, around being kind of seen as a safe pair of hands, about seen as the right person for a particular role. So there is a really good refresh of that coming down, but it is one of those things where we'd have to be honest and say it's on its way rather than here right now, but we are making that progress. Kuvy, is anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think whilst it is on its way, we've started working with our talent and leadership team already with our systems, looking at the talent management programmatic approach, and that means working with you guys to look at how you're harnessing your talent, because we know truly, myself, yourself, Dan, and many colleagues here know that, particularly when it comes to BME staff, that often that it's about not having the opportunity rather than often not having the skills, often because often colleagues have transferable skills, but they are not looked at in the same way as other colleagues. So I think this notion of we don't have the people out there to actually to sort of deliver or actually progress in those roles needs to be changed. That narrative needs to be changed, but it's more about how we harness, how do we identify talent from an inclusive lens, but also not relying on developmental programs. By that, I mean sort of we have positive initiative action programs, which are useful, but actually we need to embed a culture of inclusive talent and career progressions for all. So this is something that we will be working with our regional colleagues, but also importantly to then have that conversations with systems to look at how they're embedding that in their day-to-day kind of culture and practices, really.
We've got another question. It's great that we're talking about talent management. However, what are the plans to remove racism and discrimination in the recruitment process? You may grow your own and harness them, but when they get to interview, why are they not getting the roles? And this seems to be a problem nationally, that when BME people get shortlisted, they're just not getting the roles. And there is a lot of belief that the recruitment processes could be open to dispute in the way they don't think it's fair. So the question from the audience is, what are your plans to remove discrimination in the recruitment process?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I could, yeah, sorry.
let me just say something on that, because and then let Kuvy say something more. So if you look at the high impact changes, the actions that we set out there, quite a lot are about recruitment and access to opportunity. What we need, I think, is a partnership between the statistics that Kuvy mentioned, i.e. we need to hold organisations to account for delivering proper diverse organisations, which means proper diversity at every level of their organisation. So we need to use the statistics in a really firm way around leadership and accountability. And then we need to work and keep working on the high impact changes that we've said were set out that will make a difference, which is about, you know, proper development for panels, a proper understanding of what transferable skills are, and holding panels accountable for making decisions that they can then demonstrably show to be fair, equitable and safe. And so in that sense, we need a partnership between great process and also a really quite cold look at, well, so what's the difference? So we've done this in areas where, for instance, we've seen organizations that have got fantastic policies, but they don't have a single member of a black community or a minority ethnic community on their board. So it's great having a great policy, but if you can't then match that against moving the dial and statistically demonstrate that you're changing things when it comes to proportional and representation, then it isn't working. So I think all we can do is keep working on those two areas. Great policy, great strategy, fantastic cultural change. That's all really important. But actually, there's a mirror to be held up as well that says, look at the difference you are making in cold, hard facts. And it's not enough. And I think we bring those two things together, and we just have to keep emphasizing it is the accountability of the senior leaders of organizations. In the same way they're accountable for delivering a balanced financial position, they're accountable for making sure that we reduce the waiting list for access to services. They're also accountable for delivering a fair and safe and inclusive working environment. And we have to use the stats we have to demonstrate to that senior leadership where they are failing in doing that. And I think that partnership is the only way we can make a difference, because unfortunately we do know for certain, because of all the research, that if you don't do that, then what happens is we get fantastic intent, much more limited outcome, and that's something that we've faced for many years, and it's unacceptable, frankly. We need to make that different. But Kuvy, do you have a different view on that? Is that about where we are?
I will just add one thing around that. As you can see, I'm sharing my screen again here because it's really important. I can't, I guess, ignore the fact that I guess as a region, our role is to hold our systems to account on how they are embedding good practice. And you can see here that we did put some inclusive recruitment workshops for all our ICS systems in the region. And that was partly led by myself in terms of making sure that there is a space where good practice is shared. When we look at evidence-based practice, Roger clients, not evident, no tick box exercise, as some of you would know and should know that there are some good evidence practice example in there. The question I ask is, how are organizations embedding the basic principles in their organizations? And I mean, I don't want to be negative, is we had this workshop, but only 8 people from Northamptonshire signed up to this. So we've got a problem in terms of we can create resources and bring sort of trying to create a opportunity for people to come together to look at learning, looking at what evidence is out there and embedding that. But I think there is, again, ownership and commitment for people to make that time and to come to those sessions. So that session was delivered. And what we're going to be doing is doing a whole regional sessions and take the learning together about what the good practice were from each of the systems and sharing that again to you guys. But just to reiterate the fact that there have been some resources out there, but it's not always been taken up, really, unfortunately.
Thank you. I just want to share one more question, please, and this is for Toby, and perhaps you could also chip in, Steve and Kuvy. And the question from Slido anonymously is, with the potential upcoming organisational change, how will EDI play a role to ensure colleagues in this category are considered fairly and represented?
Thanks, Diana. And Steve, Kuvy, for your benefit, because you'll be less cited on this, we as an integrated care board, as part of the changes in running cost allocation processes, will be starting from next week a formal management of change process in relation to some of our structures, making sure that we've got what we need that's fit for purpose for the organisation going forward. So it's a very specific question that relates to the 200 or so people that we directly employ here from an integrated care board point of view. And we did a soft launch on that in our open staff briefing session yesterday, so it's a very topical kind of conversation this week. And Diana, my kind of commitment is the same as runs from an exec team point of view, and actually this came up as a question yesterday in our staff briefing session. The process that we'll run in terms of that management change process will obviously run in line with our organisational policies and procedures. They are there to kind of guide us through these things in a very equitable and even-handed way. I'm really pleased to say that we've got our staff forum, which has a fairly kind of diverse range of leaders that work as part of that. And we briefed them yesterday ahead of that staff briefing session, and in particular have asked the 3 of the co-chairs for that group to play a role within our organisation in being a bit of a conduit and a channel on people's experiences and how that process is being rolled out. So if there are things that we're not hearing or people don't feel comfortable to raise directly with their line manager or with their chief officer for their directorate lead, that we've got channels of communication there that people can raise those kind of questions through. But as I said yesterday on the staff brief session, our kind of the whole approach to coming at this has been from a what's the role and purpose of the integrated care board over the next few years within a system, what might sit elsewhere within collaboratives or within some of our place arrangements, and how do we look at it functionally, and then make sure that the way that we're working that through from a policy and an implementation point of view is completely even-handed, but maximises where there is the opportunities through that in terms of progression, in terms of staff development. We've also brought in some additional mids and lengths CSU support to help us through this process in terms of extra capacity from an OD and a change management point of view to make sure we've got the support we need internally. But I would also just say, Diana, I appreciate one of the great things about Slido is it's anonymous, so people can ask questions through that. If whoever's either asked that question doesn't feel that's responding to what was being put there or wants to raise things either directly with me or with our staff forum lead separately, please just reach out. Thank you.
Diana, I would want to add just one comment. So I'm not going to talk about Northamptonshire's change programme at all. I don't know anything about it. But generally speaking, change programmes, the NHS is really poor around ensuring that we take the opportunity through change programmes of making a difference. So we do a lot of equality impact assessments right through the different stages of change, which is proper, right thing to do. But that's an example for me of having the right policy and principles. But if it doesn't result in something better or different and in a way that actually is positive, then what's the point of it? So it's not just about having equality impact assessment regularly taking place. At the end of the change programme, the question has to be, have you moved the dial? Have you taken this opportunity to make things different? Even a relatively, what could be argued as a relatively negative change programme that might result in a reduction in the total amount of leadership time, still might present some opportunities for improved diversity, mightn't it? So the question isn't, did you have a great equality impact assessment process? That's not the right question, is it? The right question is, now we've done it all, do we have better representation than we used to have at senior levels in the organisation? That's the right question. And I'm not commenting on Toby or the system because I don't know your change programme, but generally speaking, I think change programmes, too much emphasis on doing the procedural stuff, not enough emphasis on what was the final outcome. That's what I meant earlier when I said you've got to, the great intent has to be matched by the cold, hard statistics. You can have fantastic intent, but the stats have to show you're making a difference. And if that's not the case, then all you're doing is playing at it. And that's not good enough. So I don't know if that's a helpful comment, Diana, but that's what I honestly believe.
Thank you very much. And we just pressed for a little bit at the time. I'm going to be honest with you, and this conversation is something that we need to continue. Can I just ask Kuvy to now introduce the Northamptonshire best practice? So we know that we've got the workforce race equality strategy, but now we want to see it in action. So over to you, Kuvy.
Well, thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure to really kind of be to be here, inviting colleagues to share their good practice. So, I'm really delighted to be introducing Mark Major and Dawn Panther. So Mark Major is the CEO of Northamptonshire Carers, and Dawn Panther, the director of Northamptonshire Carers, who's going to be talking to us about their strategy in terms of anti-racist practices in their organizations, which is absolutely timely in terms of sharing the learning this week, obviously Race Equality Week. So please join me to welcome Mark and Dawn, and virtually, and over to you, Mark and Dawn.
Great. Thank you very much. We're really delighted to be speaking to you all this afternoon. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Catherine, who's one of our stars, and she's going to tell you about the work that we've been doing, and then I'll come back in at the end with a few overview comments as well. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Can
we
you hear
can,
me?
thanks.
All right. All right. And let me just make sure I get the slides up. Right, I think I'm there. Can everybody see the slides?
Yes, we can. If you could put on slideshow, that would be great.
Right. This is where I am not fantastic at it, but here we go. All right, so my name is Catherine James Oliver. Happy to be here today, feeling really motivated as well as challenged by the speakers so far. I think it's absolutely fantastic, the work that we're all involved in, and I'm glad to be representing Northamptonshire Carers. I'm a team leader for the Ageing Well team, and obviously, you know, glad to share what we've been doing. So our journey so far, I have to make mention and show the people that have been actively involved in leading some of the fantastic work here that we've been doing. Delia Gordon, who is the project lead on the Making Carers Count, Dolores, who was one of our volunteers, Rochelle, who's a group facilitator, Paul, who's a digital technician, Gaynor, who's a quality impact, and Kazana, who's a group facilitator. all these roles have been essential in terms of enabling us to make changes for our whole organisation internally. So looking at what we're doing, our practices that we currently have in place, and also making contact and put it on by listening to our carers, putting on services that's right for them. So this is the team, and I just want to show you a quick video now to introduce you to the rest of the organisation. Hope it works.
As an employee and carer, I feel I have much to offer others.
It's an honour and a privilege to help so many families. Thank you.
Where I work is fun, supportive and nurturing. I love my job.
I am listened to because of who I am, not what it is believed I stand for.
My contribution as a gay man is valid and supported.
As an employee and carer, I feel I have much to offer others.
I am continuously encouraged and empowered to have a voice.
It's an honour and a privilege to help so many families. Thank you.
Northamptonshire, where I work is fun, supportive and nurturing. I love my job.
I am listened to because of who I am, not what it is believed I stand for.
My contribution as a gay man is valid and
openly
supported.
to improve ourselves and our services.
I am continuously encouraged
Being
and
a
empowered
carer
to have a voice.
broadens your vision,
I feel visible,
widens
valued
your awareness
and validated.
and deepens your compassion.
Northamptonshire,
It is the first place of being genuinely accepted for who I am.
To care for somebody young or old is a duty. It's culturally ingrained.
The staff are like a family. We talk about
all
race
different.
inequalities openly to improve ourselves and our services.
Being a carer broadens your vision, widens your awareness and deepens your compassion.
It is the first place of being genuinely accepted for who I am.
To care for somebody young or old is a duty. It's culturally ingrained.
The staff are like a family, all different.
But connected.
Thank you. I think I had a double running of the video there. Mark, Dawn, was that the case?
Yeah, I think it was double running a
got
bit.
the gist of it.
Yeah, so we can share
I'm
that.
so
We can share
I'm
that.
so sorry. Okay, we can do that. Okay, so moving on then. I'm going to just do a whistle stop tour about everything that we've been doing, and I shan't go into too much detail because of time. Hopefully that video gave you a flavour of who we are. We're very proud of it. Delia Gordon, who was the project lead, she saw a similar video, spoke to Mark, and Mark said, yes, let's do something similar. And that's just telling you a little bit about Northamptonshire Carers and introducing you to who we are and the diversity within the workforce. Okay. Mark's got a lot to answer for. The Big Promise is one of the initiatives that we roll out here at Northamptonshire Carers. When I saw Mark Major's Big Promise, I thought that's the kind of organisation that I wanted to work for. It is part of the Race Equality Matters initiative. It was training that was delivered again by Delia and the team, and it talks about what differences you're actually going to make a difference and to promote race equality within the workplace. That's Mark's and that's mine. And the Big Promise, it's an opportunity for all staff to commit and promise to speak out and address race inequality within the workplace. And the Big Promise was the foundation of our model of change for our organisation, and it extends right across the organisation from trustees senior management team to all levels of staff, no matter their heritage or background. Another initiative that we ran was the My Name Is, and this initiative was implemented. We recognise the importance, of course, of pronouncing a person's name correctly. And we wanted people to feel that they can bring their whole self to work. Sometimes people were saying that their names were pronounced incorrectly. They'd been given a completely different name because it was easier to pronounce. And, you know, we recognized that making this simple change by pronouncing somebody's name and having it spelt out phonetically could make all the difference to that person feeling seen and valued. And we also changed our online application form, our customer databases, including our ID badges, to have staff names phonetically spelled. And we've also had phonetic pronunciations added to emails. So, for example, if you look at those names down the side, and there's the pronunciations. So Fazana Mia, Nicola Beth, Gaynor Robert, Lynn Gala Ha, Kathy Ilapi. Sorry. We've also introduced free staff network, which we're really proud of. And I co-lead the Ability Matters staff network, which is for people, members of the team who describe themselves as neurodiverse, who have a disability, visible or invisible, and who have a long-term health condition or who have support for mental health. We also have 2 other staff networks, the GEM staff network, and we use the term GEM, Global Ethnic Majority, as opposed to BAME. And we also have a Progressive Pride staff network for staff from the LGBTQ+ community. The staff networks are new. We're trying to embed them within the organisation. We're looking at what works. We're looking at how influential we can be to help shape and drive change and promote inclusivity. And that is something that we are proud of. So what do our staff networks offer? Help to create equitable opportunities for all, peer support, internal consultants, strengthen inclusion and the voice of staff, ability to influence change, promote awareness. We see them as a powerful internal resource, ensuring that specific issues are understood and addressed.
Just to say, Catherine, thank you for the presentation so far, but we are running out of time now.
Okay.
But we really do appreciate what you've shared with us today. And Mark, what we will do, we will share the slide deck with the rest of the audience as well.
Okay.
So when we send out the recording. But I wish we had more time, but you're going to have more opportunity in May to share a little bit more. But thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Any final word from yourself, Mark?
Yeah, I just think really quickly the things that I just highlight about the journey element of this. So we wanted to do something that we could embed at kind of workforce management and trustee level with being a charity. There's definitely something about, you know, the path isn't necessarily a straight one. It kind of undulates. It's a climb, and sometimes you might not be quite sure of your footing. But as a lover of mountain landscapes, all the best paths are like that, and it's what you see on the way and where you get to is a really important element of this. I think there's something that we haven't really covered today, which I would just kind of flag up, and that's an issue around sustainability. And when we do good work and we do get good practice, how do we maintain that as systems and organisations? And that's very challenging. That's very challenging in the charity world, because our initial piece of funding to do this piece of work is about to come to an end. So we've got to think about, well, how do we embed what we've done already? What's the legacy, and what can we find funding to carry on with? So that whole issue about sustainability is really key, I think, within this. And then just lastly as well, I'd just like to say, as a system, how great it was to have the reverse mentoring program in Northamptonshire for senior leaders. And it's so important to have really great role models like Diana and Catherine to help take this.
We're going to have to, unfortunately, leave it there, Mark. I'm so sorry to cut you short there, because I'm just so aware of time. Unfortunately, there's not enough time. So we've got 2 other presenters. So if that's okay, just a quick round of applause to Mark, Catherine, and Dawn. Thank you so much for your presentation. So if Diana, I will move us swiftly, if that's okay, to our next presenter. Our next presenter is David Ledger. David Ledger is HR business partner responsible for equalities at Northamptonshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. So David, again, pleasure to be welcoming you to present to us your work and reflection on the work so far around tackling racism. So over to you. And if you could keep it slightly brief, that would be much appreciated, so we have time for the next speaker as well. Thank you, David.
No worries. Thanks, Kuvy. Yes, I'll try to do this in 5 minutes or less. So my name's David Ledger. I'm one of the senior HR business partners at Northamptonshire Healthcare, and I'm going to share with you our work on Together Against Racism. It's a joint programme of work that we deliver in our group model with Leicester Partnership, and it's a piece of work that benefits both trusts, looking at patients, staff and community. The Together Against Racism group came together through feedback from colleagues, and a real driver for change was in 2020 with the kind of disproportional impact of COVID, the murder of George Floyd, and the Black Lives Matters movement brought us together with a real impetus as a group to move forward and take action together against racism. So the group involves people from our REACH networks, which is race, ethnicity and cultural heritage networks, our executives, HR colleagues, organisational development, comms and equality, diversity and inclusion leads. And the strategic aim is to move both organisations in the group, so NHFT, Northamptonshire Healthcare and Leicester Partnership Trust, closer to becoming anti-racism organisations. We'll share the slides with you, but this covers some of the things that we've done so far. So things like making sure we've got our board endorsement right, board pledges. We did some leadership masterclasses where we got colleagues involved in different learning initiatives. We did a review of decision-making groups. We looked at language of race, and we started to take steps to address and tackle racist abuse from patients. And that culminated at the end of that roadmap journey in 2 board workshops that happened in November 2022 and January 23, and that sprung out this new programme of work. We'd obviously achieved a lot, and we'd gone through quite a lot of initiatives, but we knew we needed to do an awful lot more, and our programme needed to move into a very different space. So let's just have a brief look at what we defined this piece of work as, Together Against Racism. It is about acknowledging that racism and discrimination exist, and really importantly, it's cohesively taking the action to tackle this together. So it's about the actions in which we challenge ourselves and others, as well as other organisations, cultures and communities. So we're taking a wide-ranging look at actually what causes disproportional impacts, both in terms of the workplace, in terms of patients and patient outcomes and health inequality, and also within our local communities. We have a clear vision of what we'd like to do together and how we'd like to work. So we want to be places of work and of care where everybody feels they belong and can bring their whole self to work. And again, we felt really importantly to move from where we were, which was focusing on quite workforce issues, but to focus on the provision of care. And how does everybody bring their whole self to that environment between a clinician, patient, service user? We have some very big kind of ambitions that we'd like to achieve. Things like creating compassionate cultures and roles in which people can thrive, like to make sure we involve service users and communities more in terms of how we plan and develop our services. And we want to make sure clinicians are equipped to deliver culturally competent care and really make sure that health outcomes for all our patients in all sections of our community are owned by the teams, and health inequality is understood, recognised and owned and actioned upon. So I've gone through those pretty quickly. I want to spend just a minute or two on what is our programme of work. So as you can see, we've got our definition of Together Against Racism at the top. It's about acknowledging racism and discrimination exist. We've got our vision that we want to work together proactively across Leicester Partnership and Northamptonshire Healthcare to be places of work and places of care where everyone can bring their whole self to work. And what you can see there is 3 distinct pillars of work within this programme. So we still have a workforce focus, and that's led by Chris Oakes, Director of HR and OD at NHFT, Northamptonshire Healthcare. But we've also then got a patient and service user pillar, and that group and that section of work is led by Tanya Hibbert, Director of Mental Health at Leicester Partnership. And really importantly, we've got a community pillar, and that's led by Alison Gilmore, Director of Strategy and Partnership across LPT and NHFT. So much wider breadth than where we were previously focusing on workforce. We've got underneath each of those headings some of our key priorities. So as touched on already in this session today, we want to focus on delivering inclusive recruitment and what does that look like in both organisations. We want to look at ethnic and cultural minority colleagues' career development. And then some of the areas that we want to make sure we get right for communities is understanding actually how do we get our equality data out so we can really start to work on health inequality and make sure that we've got real information about who's accessing our services, but really importantly, who isn't accessing our services and who's not getting the same outcomes. And when it comes to community, we want to really streamline what we do and how we reach into communities. So how do we work with communities? What's in it for them? How do we make sure that we're rewarding and recognition the contribution that people make as we shape our services together? So I'll kind of cut short what I was going to talk through, but hopefully that gives you a flavour of our kind of programme of work, moved from workforce into a much wider breadth, looking at patient service users and community. We launched this programme on the 24th of January, and it's a programme that we look to get action plans together and deliver over the next 12 to 18 months.
Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you for your understanding in that and keeping that quite short, really. But it's really interesting presentation. And if I may, Dan, just to encourage colleagues with questions, comments in the chat box for David, as probably we won't have time to pick that up here. So I'll move on swiftly. David, again, thank you so much for that. I mean, one of the things that strike me here is around how do we bring the whole self, trying to tackle racism and allowing people to be their whole self. I think something that will resonate with a lot of us. How do we do that? But thank you for that. And the next speaker is Farhana Ahmedabadi Patel, who was also previously in the system EDI lead, but is now head of EDI at Northampton General Hospital. And Farhana, welcome. Really great to see you, Farhana. And I think you're going to be talking to us about the launch of your race equality strategy. And if that, again, warm welcome, but if you could keep it quite short for us, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Kuvy, and hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Farhana Ahmedabadi Patel. I am supporting the delivery of equality and inclusion within the both acute provider organisations within Northamptonshire. I started in my role only in September, so we're a very fairly new team in both organisations. Both organisations are at a very different place, and the local demographics within our organisation have changed very, very rapidly due to staffing issues that we've had nationally, and like other NHS provider organisations, we have had to look for colleagues from international communities, and hence for us it was very important that as we united and worked together as a group, we also created a sense of belonging for our colleagues in line with the National People Promise. One of the first things we did when we came together was create an anti-racist statement where our colleagues created a model of work for us, a model of behaviors that we as an organization acted upon, and we supported our community and our patients and the kind of care that we delivered to our community. It was also very, very important for us to co-produce everything. So the one focus that we've always had is nothing about me without me. And we have involved our colleagues, our stakeholders, which includes our governors, our community partners, to involve themselves and to support us in building our tackling racism strategy. So this wasn't just about one person sitting in the office deciding. This was all our colleagues coming together with some powerful stories. One of the biggest things that we have achieved so far is we've created our own tackling racism toolkit, which is available on our intranet for our colleagues. It is an acknowledgement that of these 4 statements that you can see on our screen, and it is also about a self-help guide and a procedure by which we kind of work according to our values and hold ourselves to account and support our colleagues, even against patient incivilities. We have, as part of our Race Equality Week this week, we have created these pledge cards. We have launched our Tackling Racism strategy this week. And we've had lots and lots of support from all the way from our chief exec to all our colleagues in both organisations who have committed themselves to either be an ally to our staff networks, to be an ally within their team, especially for tackling racism, or to be a patient champion. I must say that at our Northampton Hospital, we also have an EDI patient champion, and it's a great opportunity to work alongside our patients and our community to support health and equality related pieces of work. We already have a great strategy called the Dedicated to Excellence strategy, which is on the right-hand side bottom of your screen. But when we decided to work around our tackling racism strategy, our work streams were designed by our colleagues who have created a plan of work called I Matter. And this was plotted against our existing values on our existing Dedicated to Excellence program, kind of reinforcing the message that we need to be excellent at our tackling racism in the exact same way as we are with our values throughout the organisation. We have set ourselves an EDI steering group, which is made up of a substantial number of our colleagues from various parts of the organisation, our local community volunteers, and our staff side representatives to hold us to account. And these steering groups will be presenting a paper to our people committee and our board on our performance. And I'll take your questions from there on. Thank you.
Brilliant. No, Fana, really great. And you can see actually a lot of people are really impressed with the presentation. I think what the message is clear is around focus on action, accountability, which I can hear loud and clear in your presentations there. So, and supporting the network to do that as well, which is really great. So thank you so much to all our presenters, really, in terms of showing some of the good practice they are doing. And I know we all know that this doesn't happen overnight. It's work that will require dedications, perseverance, and continuous effort. So on that note now, if I'm going to hand over to Steve to talk about our actions and pledges, that links in really well, really. If that's okay.
Thank you. And I'm going to be really quick because I want to give Toby at least a couple of minutes to do some summing up as well. So whilst Toby is speaking, we're going to ask you to do something for us. So we've talked a lot about the key players, definitely employees and their senior leaders, definitely our specialist advisors, definitely our networks to support each other. They're all absolutely key in this. But actually we are as well individually, aren't we? We have a personal accountability to be different in this space and to do what we can do to improve equality and inclusion right across our employment and our employers. So whilst Toby is summing up his thoughts, can people either with Slido or in the chat box just give a commitment, a pledge, something you will do, some way that you might be different in the coming year that will make a contribution, will make race equality nearer a reality than it is at the moment within the Northamptonshire system. So whilst Toby is talking, obviously listen very carefully to Toby, but also if you wouldn't mind just popping in either Slido or chat your own personal pledge, what you'll do this year to help. And I'll hand over to you, Toby, because I know you'll want to sum a few comments up if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And it won't be the first time people are typing on screen while I'm talking at the same time, so I shan't mind if your eyes down. I mean, just a couple of thoughts and reflections from me. Firstly, just a huge thank you, Kuvy, Steve, to you, to our three kind of presenters. I'm really sorry we had to kind of compress that so much, but I know we're going to share the material afterwards. Also, to our facilitators, to Diana and team as well, who've kind of set today up. So a massive thank you, because it's been, as ever, a really valuable hour and a half and a very compressed one. Couple of reflections on the content, I guess, for me on this. I mean, firstly, some tremendous examples showcased of the great work underway across Northamptonshire, and a lot of the good things we've got to build on. But I wanted to come back, actually, Kuvy, to one of your slides and to the kind of three reds in terms of one of the self-assessment tables you put up. You're right, we've got a more, I think, a very honest understanding and appreciation of where we're at from a system point of view, some of the real areas of strength, and we've showcased some of those today. What I'm really keen for us to do, working together now collectively, is to, yes, understand the things that are working really well, because there's loads of that out there, but actually, what are the gaps? What are the things where we haven't made the progress that we need to, either individually as organisations, but actually my real interest here in terms of the integration and the interface across our different partners. What more could we do for our staff collectively? What more could we do from a recruitment, a career progression, a development point of view in leadership? And what more could we do from an inequalities perspective for a wider population? That's the angle I'm really interested, the work that we'll be leading over the coming weeks and months around that health inequalities, race inequalities action plan focuses on those specific areas. But just a huge thank you for the contributions that have come in today, and I can see pledges and other things coming through as we're speaking. So I'll pause at that point and hand back. I'm not sure if, Steve, I'm handing back to you and to Kuvy, or if I'm handing back perhaps to Amelia from a facilitator point of view.
Yes, it's me, Toby. Thank you very much. I'm not going to say much. I think you've summed it all up there, Toby, quite nicely for us. Just want to say a big thank you to everybody for your time and for spending time with us here. So I'm going to ask for Diana to pop on the screen for us. I know some people may have possibly been affected by some of the information or the experiences they may have had today. So there is some well-being support and advice that can be sought. So we will pop up that information up on the screen for you. Sophie, thank you for doing that. Fantastic. And also, we would value your feedback. Your feedback is so important to us, so that we may be able to know where we can improve in the future when we hold such further sessions. So we will put up a link as well on the screen, and Slido as well on there as well, if you'd prefer to use that as an option for your valued feedback. We'd really, really appreciate that. Please make sure you do complete feedback for us. Thank you. And also, just to mention quickly before you all disappear, that we do have a coming up future event on Monday, the 26th of February, between 12:30 and 2. So it's the LGBTQ and History event, headed under the scope celebrating local LGBTQ achievements. We'd love for you to attend, and the information's right there as well in front of you. Yes, and that's it really from us. Thank you very much for attending the session today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.